Jean-Michel Basquiat, Carol Walker, Faith Ringgold, Rasheed Johnson, Amy Sherrill, and Kerry James Marshall. These are but a few names of the world's most renowned Black painters of our generation, each choosing to portray the culture and their Blackness through beautifully crafted paintings. Be it past or present, we look to these artists and others like them as beacons of representation, hope, and storytelling. While I wouldn't see myself among the giants just yet, I do consider myself a burgeoning culture bearer with the body of work that I've crafted over the last 14 years, including my illustration, comics, and even performance pieces. Unfortunately, there's a creeping burden we as Black artists have to contend with should we choose to pursue this passion professionally. A burden that consistently weighs greatly upon our shoulders, and it's something that could potentially cost us our own cultural identity. I'm Habo, and welcome to the Art Block, a show where I take a closer look at the world of art and culture through the lens of the Black experience, sometimes joined by a friend or two while we create art. Yeah, we talk about art while creating art. This episode is somewhat of an experiment between video essay and casual podcast. I'm just trying to see something, so bear with me while we go through this. It's going to be a good one. On today's episode, I want to talk to y'all about the cost of Black artistic expression, the disparities that we face as Black artists, and what we can do as a community to counter these same issues. Later on in this video, I'll be joined by artist and colleague Morgan Bassan as she shares her opinions on these issues as well, while we collaborate on a really cool illustration. Black artists simply can't exist. There's an asterisk next to our name, and we ain't even put it there. It was placed upon us by a society that refuses to just accept our culture without exploiting it for monetary gain. What I've come to realize as I've gotten older is that our trauma is celebrated more than our joy. Years ago, I worked at a Soho art gallery, and I was fortunate enough to meet Carol Walker on several occasions. We held a solo exhibition for her, and it was my first time being introduced to her and her work. I quickly became a fan and followed her ever since. Carol's art is beautiful, majestic, and unforgettable. The catch, if you want to call it that, is simply that her body of work is trauma-infused. Her illustrations, sculptures, and paintings portray the brutal realities of American slavery, forcing us as the audience to reckon with the uncomfortable truths that in this day and age are slowly becoming retconned in our own education system. I was there in 2014 for Miss Walker's A Subtlety at the now decommissioned Domino Sugar Factory here in Brooklyn, witnessing firsthand her most visceral work yet. A 35-foot tall gargantuan sphinx made of sugar, taking the form of a naked Black woman. Scattered around the factory, young boys made of molasses holding wicker baskets. The day that I went not only was the last day for the exhibition, but it was also an extremely hot day. Those molasses-made sculptures were melting. There was a weight in the air that would not have been felt on any other day, giving this work a whole new meaning. Yet it would be lost on the white tourists and fans who just pointed out and gawked at the Sphinx exposed private area. The amount of time, energy, and funding going into such a beautiful piece only for its message to be missed so easily. I believe it is our duty as Black artists to pass on our traditions, stories, and culture through the God-given creative talents we've been blessed with. A way to preserve where we've come from, to prevent erasure and appropriation. However, I also believe we toe a fine line between this preservation and what I call a pigeonholing effect. It's forced upon us by a society obsessed with the plight of Black people, as evidenced by the work of Carol Walker and the main subject of this video, American fiction. A few months back, I finally had the opportunity to sit down and watch Cord Jefferson's 2023 film American Fiction, which is based on novelist Percival Everett's book Erasure. The film stars Jeffrey Wright, Erica Alexander, Sterling K. Brown, Tracy Ellis Ross, Issa Rae, and Leslie Uggam. It's an underrated film that highlights the problem of the Black identity converting to an easy-to-digest commodity for the white gaze. I've been screaming into the wind for the longest time about these issues, and this film came out of nowhere and kind of just gave me a nod. I felt acknowledged, I felt seen. The plot follows Jeffrey Wright's character, Thelonious Monk Ellison, a novelist struggling to find an audience and make ends meet. He's an excellent writer, but his latest books just ain't hitting with the dozens of publishers he's submitted to. Fed up with the state of the publishing landscape and his career, a plan is hatched with his agent, Arthur, played by John Ortiz, to write under a pseudonym, Stag Art Lee, to create a book titled My Pathology, containing a plot rife with problematic tropes and stereotypes of Black men. My Pathology is written as a joke. Monk thinks nothing of this book. The same feelings he has towards his colleague, Santara Golden, played by Issa Rae, and her book, Weeze Lives in the Ghetto, a novel relying heavily on racial stereotypes that also happens to be a bestseller. Unfortunately for Monk, he underestimates the insatiable hunger of white consumption. The new publishers love my pathology. Monk, as Stag R. Lee, has a meeting with the publishers to change the name of the book from My Pathology to Buck. While I won't give the entire plot away, Monk once again underestimates the insatiable hunger of white consumption as this new title gives the book more power, turning it into a major success, which forces Monk to be at odds with himself, his newfound success, and his mission as an artist. This bleeds into his personal life, his relationship with his mother, brother, and new romance with a woman named Coraline, played by Erica Alexander. The film demonstrates how our stories are chiseled down and reduced to our pain to have any semblance of success. We as artists have a pressure to perform identity to reach an audience and profitable market. Monk has to perform as Stag R. Lee to get publishers to care about him as a writer. While I haven't put on a persona myself personally, I've fallen into that trauma-infused trap with my own work that I've tried to break out of fairly recently. More on that in a bit.
I think probably the best thing we could do to get away from that is to continue doing what we're doing independently, because I see a lot of independent artists, they push a lot of more positive portrayals of our culture out. We put a lot more of ourselves out there. We have a lot more um I guess I can say we have a lot more balanced depictions of ourselves, considering the fact that we're living this daily. We consider ourselves regular people, and as artists we like to put a lot of ourselves into our artwork. I think that just showing the world that we are multifaceted people and that we have more to offer than just the whole slavery and segregation narrative. I think that putting that out there can really enlighten a lot of people on what can actually be shown. It can give the world more of a multifaceted view of who we are, and I guess the sort of things that you know can be put out there in our stories, because the we are partially, the trauma is, it is a part of us. The slavery, that's our history. Segregation, that is our history, but there is more to us than that. You see a lot of black people who are moving in success. You see black people moving in a lot of different spaces. You see a lot of black people now, they're saying like, oh, I want to do the cutesy stuff. I'm in my soft girl era. I'm focusing on black boy joy, black girl magic, all of these other different things that encompass who we are. And I think that if we continue to show people who we are and what can, come out of our lives and come out of our culture, then I think people can actually start seeing like, hey, maybe we can start showing this. Maybe this will be lucrative. Maybe this will actually draw in an audience.
It's a never-ending tug of war between authenticity of self and market demand. A moment ago, I mentioned falling into that trauma trap, pigeonholing myself as an artist. My most celebrated work to date is the Unit 333 series, born from my struggles with mental health and attempted suicide and experiencing life inside of a psychiatric facility. It was a grueling process to create the original comic and illustration. Just like Monk in American fiction and Carol Walker in real life, I had created something infused with pain. I've been producing comics, illustrations, and other works prior to Unit 333, yet it wasn't until then where the world started to pay attention. The most reception I'd ever received, both online and in person, was for Unit 333. And just like Monk and Carol Walker, I don't want to be seen as the trauma artist, the mental health guy, or any other moniker or name that people put upon me. That story is important and is integral to a greater conversation, but that's not all of who I am. This demand for artists to produce commodified versions of our pain and culture puts us in direct conflict with the genuine artistic expression that we aim to make. This pressure stunts our creative growth, forcing us into molds created by others. Very few of us get to step outside of that bubble to explore and experience success, but most of the time, those celebrations of non-monolithic blackness aren't advertised or go unnoticed. The powers that be certainly have a tight grip on this industry, but I also believe another part of this problem is our own community. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go crazy and OD on y'all, do like a full Hab Hotep thing, but however, There's been a rise of anti intellectualism blowing through us like a Tasmanian devil tornado. We've become fascinated and distracted by surface level art, refusing to go deeper, taking things at face value, or outright calling anything to present a meaningful message corny. I haven't seen many folks chatting about American Fiction, and it's not because it's a bad film, it's an excellent film. There's just something missing in the equation preventing its reach to the broader black community.
We have the anti-intellectualism thing going on. I think that's just part of that is a symptom of, a lack of community that we kind of have overall. And then, of course, unfortunately, just the powers that be are kind of not exactly prioritizing education all the time. And so you end up having a lot of people fall short in those areas. A lot of people start lacking critical thinking because it's not necessarily something that is being pushed as important. And we kind of collectively start getting into these like ideas that, education is not important, literacy is not important. And we don't necessarily have too many people to kind of stand up and sort of try to be a buffer and a help in that way. And I think that there can potentially be ways that you can fix that if you can kind of come together and be more of a community. If we can be more communal with people, then maybe there can possibly be a way where we can shift the way people think. Maybe if we learn how to come together and we kind of learn to lean on each other for different things, maybe we can kind of change the whole overall mindset that we have on things because we're kind of relying on I guess we're sort of relying on a lot of different systems, and the systems aren't necessarily set up for our benefit. And you could even like look back in the day, you had to have a lot of groups that would come together and sort of be that help for the community, like whether it would just be something as simple as doing free breakfast programs, or it would just be helping children with reading, or helping children in, any other areas where they might be falling short. And we don't really see a lot of that anymore. And I think that that is kind of causing us to sort of grow up into these mindsets where it's just, oh, that's not important, oh, we don't have to really think about the things past the surface level because that's not, it's not prioritized in a lot of schools. And if it's not prioritized outside of that, then they're never really going to get that.
Social media amplifies this trend of anti intellectualism with this short attention span, no questions asked, slot machine experience slowly encroaching our daily lives over the past few years, leading to an exploitation of blackness and black creative expression. American Fiction highlights how our narratives of resilience and struggle are often packaged into bite sized moments, diluting the message where things can be taken out of context, turning our art, our culture into trendy memes. Sure, an opportunity to explore the context further is there, but let's be real. How many people do you know do that?
Social media is dangerous. And I mean, I I think that it has a good purpose. It's helped me to get a lot of work, and it's helped me to elevate myself in professional spaces. So there's a benefit to it, but it is so dangerous because it gives anybody a platform. And everybody does not need to have a platform. And you have like these people that don't know what they're talking about, but seem to be highly influential, getting online and just saying anything and causing a lot of confusion. But then on top of that, there's also the point that you said where people's attention spans are just not what they need to be. Like everything is a short dance video, everything is for entertainment purposes. Nothing is really for the advancement of education. Nothing is really for influencing people to do anything that's productive. It's all just kind of silliness. And it's actually really sad. And then it's a little worse for the younger crowd because they just kind of grew up with this. Like we're really just kind of getting into this ourselves. So we were, like maybe teenagers or whatever when we started getting into MySpace or whatever. But these kids, they're just like they're coming straight out the gate, getting on TikTok and Instagram, and it's just like it's all they know. They're not really focusing on reading books or trying to better themselves in ways that are going to help them grow and do things productive with their lives. They're focusing on learning the newest dance or getting on comment sections and saying all kind of skibidi toilet or
Oh
whatever
my
they
God!
talking
Don't bring that over here. Oh my God! You done said skibidi. Now we curse. We're cursed now.
about.
Black artists face an unprecedented burden of representation. In American fiction, Monk deals with the frustration of being expected to represent blackness in a very specific way. The poor male thug with daddy issues embroiled in drugs and gun violence with no clear path out. A limiting and burdensome narrative that reduces blackness to a simplistic, one dimensional stereotype. Similarly to Monk, in the film, this expectation undermines the diversity and individuality of black artistic voices. There should never be an instance where we need to think about how consumable or how digestible our art is for non black audiences.
I guess in terms of getting the stories out there, then maybe it's gonna have to be something that's, similar to the Boondocks. Like the foolery is gonna have to be the Trojan horse that gets the intellectual points out there because, it's like you said, we're kind of in a minority. We want to see those subversive stories. We want to see that there's like a little bit more to the black community than drugs and guns and nonsense. But if that's kind of all our people really want to see, then maybe there is a way that you can tackle these stories uh, and just include a lot of things that are a little bit more on the stereotypical side in a way that will sort of kind of be able to tell all of the black reality while not leaving out that whole like this traumatic foolishness and stuff happens in the community, and I guess using that as a way to I guess bring it to the forefront because like you were saying with the Boondocks, it's like you see like a whole lot of nonsense in it. There's a lot of things about gangster licious and getting into the
That
whole
thug and love.
yeah, and him getting into the whole uh lover spat that ended up with him uh getting chased down, and there was all kinds of gun violence, and sometimes surface level people might see that and they might not really think of the deeper imagery that's actually in there, but it's brought them to the story. It's like it's brought it out there to the forefront, so now people are watching it and they're kind of seeing like at the end of the episode like there's this kind of moral here at the end, or like there's this in-depth thought that maybe one of the characters brings out into it. Usually of course it's Huey, obviously,
Yeah.
because he's the only woke one in family. So I feel like maybe that can potentially be a way that we can approach stories in the future because unfortunately a lot of this stuff is a part of our reality. Like a lot of these nonsensical things that happen, it happens in a lot of our communities, so it wouldn't necessarily be inaccurate to put it in there, but you could just kind of use that as a way to bring forth what the main focus and the main message is.
Field full of flowers. They're riding on a horse. Uh they're a general in like they're the general of an army or something like that. And I do love the juxtaposition. A lot of people critique him for it being kind of like basic in a sense, but I think that's a great way to get people in, similar to the Boondocks. And I feel like with what happened in American fiction, it demonstrates the struggle with that, because there's that fine line where you don't want to fall into that trap. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself. You don't want to be in a space where you're kind of like, oh, this is the this is the thug artist, this is the trauma artist, this is that, because we're, like you said earlier, we're so much bigger than that, we're so much deeper than that. And it's stressful because we all want to make money. All artists should be able to make money regardless, if they're pursuing it professionally. And unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of finagling we have to do to get to that point, to reach that audience, to have that comfortability, with sustainable income. And it makes me wonder how many bigger name contemporaries that we've seen have had to do that to get to the place where they are. I think about Amy Sherrill too. It's like, what was she doing in the beginning of her career? And other artists like her. And how do you feel about, you know because you're also in a very prominent space as well. Do you ever feel like you struggle with that fine line of trying to promote your representation, but also like kind of sticking to what the game is so you can still stay afloat?
Uh, so to a degree, yes, because see, when I kind of was really getting like a little bit of a following online, it was mostly just for like certain things. Like not to say that some of the stuff I was doing was like, really stereotypical or anything, but I really kind of got more of a following when I was like only really doing like the black anime characters.
Mm.
And it's not like a bad thing. It's fun to do. You can play around with it. You can reimagine characters how you like and everything. But it seems like for the most part, that's kind of all people wanted to see. Like they only wanted to see Black Sailor Moon. They didn't necessarily want to see a lot of original works or original characters. They kind of just had this one idea of like, oh, I just kind of want to see, the vibes of a black superhero doing
Mm-hmm.
stuff, or, whatever. So I kind of try to get away from that, and try to post a little bit more original things. And while sometimes those things would get a little bit of attention, nothing was really trumping the attention that like the redraws got me. Like everything was just like, oh, do more black anime characters. Oh, can you do this anime? Can you do this one? And it's like, if I didn't do that, I didn't really get like a lot of reception back, or sometimes I would even lose a lot of followers. And I just kind of noticed that people just kind of want, I guess, what they think is, I guess, cool and what they are somewhat familiar with. Um, and again, it's like, it's not really a bad thing. I don't necessarily think that it is bad that people like to see the black anime characters, and I like doing them. They were fun, but I
And I have
would
to say,
like
they
to
are
be
brilliant.
able
I
to.
love your reimaginings. Like the level of detail and personality you put into them, I love it,
Oh,
because that's quality. A
thank
lot
you
of
so much.
people, yeah, for real. Because I feel like, I just want to big you up real quick. A lot of people do the whole fan art thing, and they just kind of, they do something basic, or like maybe, or sometimes they'll like twist up the whole thing and kind of make it look again like this stereotypical thing, like when they used to make I don't know if you remember when they used to draw Goku sipping lean and like having like the gold chain and stuff like that. Like you used to see a lot of that. So I love that you are able to forge this your own path where you're drawing the characters in your own unique way, but still sticking to like the tradition of what the character is, to give it that familiarity and show respect to the creators. So shout out to you, for real. You're an amazing
Oh,
artist, for
thank you.
real.
Thank you. But that was always my goal with it. I always just kind of wanted to see how I could change them, but make them recognizable at the end of the day, and
Hmm.
maybe add some culture to them. So, it maybe everybody doesn't necessarily see that. And people are just kind of there because they're like, we just like the vibes of the Black Sailor Moon. And again, like I do like some of the impact that made. Like little black children will see that and they'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen like these little black cartoon characters, and it makes me feel pretty, and it makes me feel like I can be a superhero. So I don't hate the attention that it got. I do think that it has a positive role in basically what I'm trying to do, because I feel like it still has made a positive impact on some people, and it is showing people that, we can be beautiful, we can be superheroes, we can be uh whatever else I was drawing, with like a little dog guy or whatever Inuyasha is. But for the most part, I I liked the impact that it made, but at the end of the day, it's a little harder to get off the ground with something that isn't that. Like, if it's not going to be like a redrawn anime screen cap, it doesn't really get quite as much attention. And especially now, because some of these platforms kind of suppress views, you really don't see a lot of engagement coming in from some of the more original stuff.
Yeah,
And
doesn't
so
that
I
drive
was
you
like,
crazy? Like, how do you feel
yeah,
about that?
I I'm
Be
I'm
honest, it's
trying to
okay.
be annoying. It's like it's annoying, and I try to just accept it, that's just kind of how it's going to be, what it is. People just sort of respond better to things that they recognize, and I hate that, but I
I hate
mean,
it too.
it's kind of just the reality of things.
Hey, it's 4 a.m. and I just realized that I'm missing an entire part to this video that I have to re-record right now. So, haha, there's a tedious balancing act black artists encounter. Real representation versus consumable commodification. Do we purposefully create stereotypical coonery just to achieve success, or do we stick to our morals and self-expression, even if that doesn't guarantee the same success that we're striving for? Which leads me to talk about one of the most important characters in American fiction, Miss Centara Golden, played by Issa Rae. Throughout the film, her book Weeze Lives in the Ghetto comes off and is presented as this bog standard self exploitative novel with all the trimmings of what you expect from a Tyler Perry film or worse. And guess what? It sells very well. Centaur represents a multifaceted, complex reality for black artists, especially for those who have attained success through catering to the white gaze. Centaur is the antithesis of Monk, or at least that's what we're supposed to think. She embodies the black artist that creates to align with consumable, commodified, trauma infused narratives. Her massive success and praise reflects the creative art industry's insatiable need to reward artists who conform to problematic and harmful stereotypes. There's a point in a film where Monk's satirical novel Fuck is nominated by a committee for a prestigious award, with both Monk and Centaur serving on this same committee, among others. Keep in mind that nobody knows Monk is Staggar Lee, the persona he used to write Fuck in the first place. Centaur makes a remark about Fuck being a work pandering to a specific audience, to Monk's surprise. It is later that the two have a pointed exchange where Monk asks Centaur why she believed Fuck was pandering. She exclaims that the novel is soulless, but Monk is curious as to why Fuck is different from Centaur's novel, Weeze Lives in the Ghetto. We learn that Monk hasn't even read her book, only excerpts, creating his own interpretation of Centaur's work. She responds explaining that she has not only done plenty of research for this book, but has taken inspiration from real interviews she's conducted. Taking a jab at Monk, she calls him out for being in his ivory tower of academia, forgetting that some folks do have difficult lives. The two go back and forth on the existence of trauma-infused works and the commodification of it that I mentioned earlier. This is the major theme of the film: the internal conflict between integrity and validation for black artists. On one hand, the purist stance, creating work that promotes non-monolithic depictions of our culture, and on the other hand, a pragmatic approach to navigating an oppressive market. Our existence should not be at this great of a conflict. Don't get it twisted. I want all black creatives to thrive. I want us all to have financial stability and unbound success. However, it should not come at the cost of respectability politics or what is seen as profitable blackness. It frustrates me that collectively we have cannibalized our culture so much to the point that it is and can be created without us.
As you know, there are a lot of people that like to cosplay as us online and pretend that they are black people, and then they're not.
I see it on
I
TikTok
think,
all the time.
yeah, I think they even had an issue with that with an artist or something on Twitter, I want to say, and
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
That was I think a year ago, 2 years ago. I talked about that. It was this dude, this Italian dude who basically painted these really great looking, black paintings. Like it was kind of in the vein of like Basquiat or something like that.
Mhm.
They were like these dark figures. I want to say, matter of fact, not Basquiat, more like Kerry James Marshall. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, where he draws a lot of shadow people, like really dark skinned people. So
Mhm.
everybody was like going crazy for this dude. I can't remember his name, and I'm not going to say his name anyway because fuck that guy. But he was posting all the time, like just these really great, like culturally, like deep and provocative paintings. And I think one day he either showed a picture of himself or something slipped. And no, he said, matter of fact, no, it was an interview or a tweet that he said, I'm not drawing black people, I'm just drawing demons. And then come to find out he's some whole white Italian dude, and people lost it. Drawing demons. So all these, because all his stuff is black people. So all these black people with the natural hair, the Bantu knots, the cornrows, all this stuff, these are demons? But we're not to blame though. It's the system that has put this in place that rewards auto-exploitative practices. A system that has created this game of survival, pitting black creatives in our communities against one another. All this bickering over what constitutes as authentic and what can be seen as selling out. The Centaur Goldens of the art world would never see themselves as sellouts, but rather empowered artists who have strategized their way to abundant success. But is it truly empowerment when you lack the freedom to create outside of the role that you've pigeonholed yourself into? The monks of the art world will always see themselves as the correct and right representation. But can you really be that correct representation when our people are so diverse? Who are you to be the gatekeeper of what is black and what's not, and what's acceptable and what's not? We're all tired of the trauma porn, the slave stories, the hood narratives. Though to ignore them is to perform the same erasure of the lived experiences and history that we've come from. We're all sick of the respectability politics too. That ivory tower uppity Negro attitude is off-putting. It creates an air of exclusivity and elitism that perpetrates white supremacy, feeding right back into that loop that we've been trying to really break. So what is the solution? Well, American fiction doesn't offer one. It's an ending, and I won't spoil it, that is filled with ambiguity. There is no moral of the story here. We, the audience, are left to determine if Monk's journey is part of the cycle or if it breaks it. This may sound corny, but the solution is community. Like, real talk. Hear me out. This system has led us to become hyper individualistic. There are so many black artists and influencers that use the term community but actually don't practice being in community. There's no community without communication. And I truly believe that if we come together, we can counter the institutionalized fetishizations and commodification of Black American and diasporic culture. Through establishing and supporting Black-owned art institutions, we can have spaces where our work can be on display and showcased without the pressures of wanting to pander to white audiences. We can pool our resources together to create and generate grants, fellowships, and residencies for our community, giving artists of any career stage an opportunity for growth. This can be done through crowdfunding online or through community-driven campaigns locally, like a fundraising event. Hell, let's find them black philanthropists we see so much online and get them to put money into it. Creating black-centered artist collectives and cooperatives would ensure that we're always connected to one another for collaborations, to share resources, and promote each other's work. This could include investing in joint exhibitions, pop-up events, festivals, and so much more, which all bypass traditional systems. Those traditional systems, while still integral to aspects of our career growth, aren't the only means to move forward. The big-name publishing houses, record labels, and galleries often seek to force black creatives to surrender creative control, much like what we saw in American fiction. Independent distribution allows us to create without compromise. With platforms like Gumroad, Patreon, TikTok, and Shopify, we finally have the ability to connect directly to one another, adding an extra layer of community support. We can invest in ourselves with knowledge sharing and mentorships to build up our skills like grant writing, marketing, and building portfolios. This can come from free or affordable workshops and open source guides like a YouTube video series or an ebook. Maybe we can figure out some sort of partnership with HBCUs to further mentorship programs between professors, professional artists, and students. Let's start amplifying stories beyond the trauma and coonery. Instead of just seeing something like My Dad the Bounty Hunter and calling it corny, we need to celebrate our multidimensionality and promote stories nestled within fantasy, Afrofuturism, and innovation. Speaking up and offering feedback to these amazing works of art will help reduce the reliance on trauma-infused works that we all know the story to already. The most important aspect in all of this is pushing for policy and structural, working with our local leaders to lobby for public funding to create or maintain art programs, provide transparency in hiring practices at art institutions, and developing initiatives to educate curators on viewing the value in Black art that exists outside of slavehood and trauma based narratives. We have to advocate for ourselves because no one else will. We need to reclaim agency over our art. We impact so much of this societal culture, and it's time we own that. Let's strip away the ego and the animosity so we can rebuild and empower ourselves. Black artists deserve so much more than these exploitative markets give. By fostering collaboration, building genuine support networks, and creating our own platforms, we can overcome the obstacles set to undermine us. And it's only then we will no longer have to worry about the cost of Black artistic expression. Cord Jefferson's American Fiction is an excellent film that doesn't force us to, but wants to help us to put a critical lens on the art industry, ourselves, and also the system that we're constantly in this hamster wheel loop. And I didn't even get to touch on the whole relationship between Erica Alexander's character and Jeffrey Wright's character. That was a whole dynamic there that I think was a great piece to the conversation. And it was just, yeah, it was a lot going on. I don't want to spoil it. I think you should watch it on your own. It's available on Amazon. As of right now, it's available on Amazon Prime. Uh, that's the only place you can watch it. But let me know what you think in the comments below, whether you think Monk's choices and his journey and his path was the right choice, or if he should have done something completely different. Do you even think he should have been Stagger Lee at all? That's what you should let me know. Would you be Stagger Lee? Would you do it? There's so many things you need to put in the comments and let me know. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. If you made it this far, you're a real one, and I want to thank you for sitting with me and watching this experiment, this very special episode of the Art Block. The video essay thing is typically reserved for my other series, Habo Speaks, but I just wanted to experiment with something and see how this would work. And maybe it does turn out good, maybe it doesn't. Either way, I did it. You know what I mean? That's the whole point of it. And I just want to give a special shout out to Morgan Bassant for joining me as well. This is what we created. This is the thing that we put together. And if you do want to see the full conversation, because there's like a full hour of us talking, if you do want to see the full conversation unedited, you can go to Patreon. Patreon, thank you to our patrons and the folks that are, current members for supporting this channel and this video. You have something special to look at. It's been up for a few, by the time this video goes up, it's been up for a few days now. So go over to Patreon, join, you get exclusive stuff, you get behind the scenes stuff, you get stuff early, whether it's my comics, whether it's my videos. There's a whole lot of things going on. So shout outs to all the Patreon members. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. And yeah, go follow Morgan. All the links are in the description. But that's it. I've been Habo. This has been the Art Block. The Art Block is back, baby. And until next time, stay true. We out. Deuces.